Okay, so without further ado, I think it's about time we start the first debate. The first debate is entitled California wildfires are a global issue caused by climate change. They are everyone's responsibility versus California wildfires are a local issue. They are California's problem and it should be California that deals with it. And we shall start with group one. If you guys want to unmute yourselves, and I'll give you a countdown.
Slideshow. Can
Oh,
we
that's yeah.
share that?
I'll let you share your screen as well.
Okay.
Yep. So all participants should be allowed to share screen. So if teams 1 and 2, if you unmute yourselves, you team 1, you have 4 minutes starting from now.
Hi, hello. We are here arguing that wildfires the California wildfires are a global issue that are caused by climate change. Our first, I'm sorry, I lost my, there it is. So our first slide shows the average global temperature change in the 1960s compared to now. As you can see, the global temperature has increased about 1 to 2 degrees Celsius above average in the last 60 years. While that may not seem like a significant amount, it makes a big difference to climate on a global scale. This is directly connected to the issue of wildfires because because climate scientists have correlated the growing incidence and intensities of wildfires with rising global temperatures. In essence, climate change leads to warmer temperatures, which makes forests more susceptible to burning. This next graph shows the general difference between the number of acres burned by California wildfires caused by climate change and compares it to how many acres would be burned if climate change was not a factor in these wildfires. This estimate shows a clear increase in acres burned by climate change in the past 50 years. Similarly, this next slide shows how the average number of wildfires and acres burned have steadily increased over the past 50 years. Although this data includes the entirety of the US, California wildfires follow these same trends. While it may be difficult to see a significant increase in the amount of wildfires in this graph, there is a definite increase in the amount of land burned. Therefore, climate change, while really increasing in the number of wildfires, has also caused these wildfires to be much more violent, destroying more and more land every year. Climate change also has an extensive effect on snowfall, which, as this simple graphic shows, also affects the issue of wildfires. While with rising temperatures caused by the climate change, snow falls later than usual and melts sooner, making forests drier for longer periods of time. This causes the dry season or wildfire season to be longer and more intense. In California, the wildfire season has extended by 84 days since the 1970s. Climate change has also increased global wind speeds, which aids fire in spreading faster, making them harder to manage and put out. Climate change is caused by many man-made and few natural causes, but no matter what the cause, the effect on wildfires are disastrous. Unfortunately, this only makes the climate problem worse, as shown by this illustration. Forests are vast deposits of carbon, and when they burn, they release the carbon into the air. With forests burning at the rate that they are, trees aren't growing back fast enough to reabsorb that carbon, so much of this carbon is released into the air. This next graph shows how abnormal the rising amount of carbon in the atmosphere is compared to the last 200,000 years. As carbon is a major greenhouse gas, this only fuels the ever-growing wildfire problem. The disruptive carbon cycle of mass wildfires has created a roundabout domino effect, releasing vast amounts of carbon into the air and worsening all the negative effects of climate change, including the massive wildfire problem. California wildfires should not be a local issue, and all responsibility to fix it should not be placed on the local government.
Even though California does have some of the worst wildfires, wildfires are happening all over the nation and the globe, caused by similar climate events and with similar harmful effects. Australia and New Zealand have wildfires, China and India have wildfires, Israel has had wildfires, South America has had them, and this summer the Arctic has burned like never before, as shown in this graph. The entire world is not on fire, but it is burning more as a result of higher temperatures caused by greenhouse gas emissions. Wildfires burn the homes of both humans and animals, upsetting ecosystems by destroying environments and upsetting human lives by burning neighborhoods. Whether or not any individual is at risk for personal damage from a wildfire, a danger to one is a danger to all. And at the rate wildfires are increasing, lands once safe from the danger presented by wildfires may not stay that way for long. In addition to the property damage, smoke from wildfires contains organic compounds that form ozone and other toxic pollutants, all of which can be dangerous and even deadly for sensitive populations. Smoke and pollutants from California wildfires travel thousands of miles, affecting air quality both nation and worldwide. This presents health problems for many at-risk individuals, and decreasing the wildfires in California would help mediate these effects. As stated before, wildfires also release excess amounts of carbon into the atmosphere, creating conditions that make it easier for wildfires to start and spread. Climate change as a whole is a global problem and that all nations and people must work to fix. The effect of wildfires contribute to global warming, which continues and worsens a cycle of global climate change. We close with a statement from the United Nations regarding climate change. Climate change is a defining issue of our time, and we are at a defining moment. From shifting weather patterns that threaten food production to rising sea levels that increase the risk of catastrophic flooding, the impacts of climate change are global in scope and unprecedented in scale.
Okay, so that was the opening arguments for it is a global issue. Now I'd like to have the opening arguments for it is a local issue. You have about 4 minutes starting from now.
California wildfires are a local issue caused by local management. It is California's responsibility to protect them, not ours. 95% of wildfires in California are caused by human activity, with a population of 39 million. John Keeley, a research scientist for the US Geological Survey, stated, "One thing that remains constant, humans are responsible for the vast majority of the blazes that occur every year. The role of human activity should be emphasized when it comes to addressing root causes of massive wildfires, both the practice and the fire suppression, and California's increasing population as primary factors." From 2012 to 2018, Henston and colleagues compiled daily high-resolution satellite data from 214 wildfires. They drew perimeters around detected hotspots for each wildfire from day to day. Then the researchers measured the distance between each day's parameter to the next day's hotspots to calculate the average, how fast the fire grew daily until it was extinguished. It found that human sparked fires typically spread 1.83 kilometers per day, more than twice as fast as the 0.83 kilometers per day for lightning-induced burns. Human-caused fires were more intense and burned 2 to 3 times as many trees as naturally induced fires. These human-caused fires have a disproportionate impact on the ecosystem. And although the ecosystem is fire adapted, it is not adapted for 80% of trees to die, like we are seeing with some of these really intense fires. Humans are extending the fire season. California is not doing enough necessary work. The Pacific Gas and Electric Company, PG&E, services 16 million. It's responsible for at least 17 of the state's 21 major wildfires from 2017 and the 2019 Camp Fire, in which 87 people died, making it the deadliest fire in California history. Mitigating high-risk areas with electric line maintenance, clearing tree limbs and vegetation, insulating power lines to prevent sparking and hide winds, replacing old transmission towers, replacing old wood poles, and to bury electrical lines. Decades of putting off maintenance have created a perfect storm. Homeowner maintenance is needed by clearing the property by 100 feet, and using fire-resistant materials on the home will save lives and property. Regulatory work on all levels and prescribed fires to clear out fuel during the non-fire season. Clearing and maintenance of land costs $200 per acre in forest and parklands. and up to $1,000 per acre in thinning, depending on terrain. Even at a cost of 100 million to 1 billion, this is a bargain compared to the $9 to $12 billion damage of recent fires. Funding budgets on all levels need to be done adequately. Grant money for communities and need-based homeowners. A third of all California is forested at 33 million acres. 20 million acres need fuel reduction treatments to reduce the risk of wildfire. Without money to do the backlog of preventative maintenance, the risks will continue. Widespread education needed from CAL FIRE, state and local governments, use of some good old common sense, and the need to meet people where they are, whether it be different languages, methods of reaching a broader audience.
Bang on 4 minutes. Does anyone else in the group have anything to add quickly? 3, 2, 1. Okay. So we're going to go on to Group 1's rebuttals. So in this, you are not allowed to present any new information, but just try and undermine some of the arguments that were presented by the second group. You have 2 minutes starting now.
All right. So one of the main arguments you had was that human activity is the main cause of many of the wildfires, and there are a couple of issues that we have with that argument. First of all, from the research that we found, then the amount of human wildfires is actually much lower than what you stated. Human-caused wildfires is actually much lower than what you stated in your research. And also, it's not only, kind of like what we showed in our graph before, it's not only the amount of wildfires, but the that's increased because of climate change. It's also the amount of acres burned and the amount of land burned that is increased. And so whether or not human-caused wildfires, even if the wildfire is started by humans, the drier forest temperatures and the greater carbon in the air definitely increases the effect of the wildfires and makes them worse and makes them burn more land, burn more property, and overall be a more expensive and more dangerous situation.
Yeah. In addition to this, another argument that was your argument was a lot based on, I felt like, was that by implementing preventative maintenance, that California could save a lot of money just by not having to save the fires. But I think we kind of have to question the relevance of this to the topic. Whether California is doing the maintenance or the nation. Either way, it still lies that California definitely needs help due to the global climate change that's happening.
And alongside of that, you also mentioned that power lines were a big issue in California's starting of the fires. But as we stated in our argument, every country, every nation in the world has had wildfires, and every nation in the world has power lines. And so just because we're focusing on California doesn't mean that these fires and doesn't mean that these fires aren't happening worldwide, and doesn't mean that those exact same causes can't happen in every nation, whether or not it's California or India.
Okay, that's you at a time. So now it's Group 2. Your 2 to 3 minutes of rebuttals to Group 1, starting from now.
All right. So a few of the claims that you made in your opening statement, we agree with. So I'm not going to try and rebuttal some of those, but just some of the counterclaims. So the biggest thing that we agree with is the fact that climate change has a role in these fires. And it's not necessarily they're the cause, but they do proportionally, I guess, not help, but they aid in more longer burns and things like that. To counterclaim what you had said, since we were talking about California, and this was mentioned, that 17 of the 21 fires in California last year were started by electrical. So if it was a climate change problem, 17 of those fires would not have been started. And so climate change did have a role in them burning longer and more acreage being burned, but those fires simply would not have existed if it weren't due to the human activity within California. And as you had mentioned, there's problems like this in other areas of the world, and we agree. But as we can see, there's other climates that are very similar to California within the United States where they have similar climates, but they manage their fires much better due to what we had talked about, the preventative measures. California is disproportionately, what's it called? Can't think of the word. The amount of money that they allocate to preventative measures to the amount of money that they have to spend in repairing everything is very, very disproportionate. And that's assumably the same for most other areas. But our big point is that if that money was spent on the front end of things, then we wouldn't have those fires to deal with, re-releasing the carbon into the air, making it a domino effect. So to claim that global warming is the cause of the California fires would be a false statement. They do aid in longer burns, but it is because of the human activity within California. So therefore it is California's job to mitigate the fires and to inform and teach their citizens how to better take care of their land that they have, and which would aid in a reduced amount of fires.
You're coming up in 3 minutes. You're coming up in 3 minutes. Right. Whoa. So now we've got closing statements from group 1. The closing argument should just be a summation, and you get 1 minute starting from now.
In conclusion, we acknowledge that wildfires are natural events, but the wildfires that are happening today or have happened in California in the recent past are symptoms of the global problem of climate change, and we all have an obligation to fix this problem. As we have shown, temperatures have been steadily increasing since at least the 1960s. This has resulted in warmer temperatures globally. These warmer temperatures have led to an increased dryness of forests and a decrease in the level of snowfall. These two factors, combined with several others, have resulted in making California wildfires more intense and more common, as we have demonstrated. Billions of dollars have been spent fighting wildfires, and $1 billion have been consumed by the flames. Not only this, but many species are threatened by constant wildfires, as well as the warming climate. Finally, we've also discussed how wildfires are increasing in frequency and severity across the globe. These are also symptoms of climate change, and they carry with them many of the same dire consequences associated with California wildfires. This further emphasizes the global nature of the problem we face. California wildfires are a global problem that is representative of the global problems we face associated with climate change. Wildfires are not only California's problem, they are everyone's problem.
Okay, that is you at a minute right there. So group 2, let's have your closing arguments now.
Climate change is not a catch-all for wildfires. While it is a factor, it is not the sole component. We are not dismissing the fact that climate change is real, but there are so many other components that play large roles in this equation. When these forests burn in such a rapid rate, the CO2 taken in and stored by the trees is released back into the atmosphere, causing further damage and magnifying the cycle. Improper management and overgrowth in forests, when combined with strong winds and hundreds of miles of electrical wires, human-made fires, an inadequate, poorly allocated budget, and an overall lack of education and prevention are the ones to blame.
Okay, well done. So before we go any further, it's worth a round of applause for both teams. Good work. Now we have just a few minutes for questions from the audience. So if you want to ask a question, the way that you do it is use the little hand up emoji or just wave at me or something, and I will answer and I will pick you up. And then you say which team you want the question to go to, or both. So, and also at this point, the teams can ask each other questions if they like as well. So, let's see. I'm just looking up for little hands. Okay, well, I'm going to get things started off with. So, here's my first question to Team 1. You showed that graph where you showed how much what the difference in overall acres burned would be with climate change versus without climate change. How did they actually calculate that? Because we can know what the number is with climate change, but we can't know what the number is without climate change because we've not had two planets to have a go at.
I can answer that. So it was based basically off of like what wildfires were like before like temperatures started increasing, because we know temperatures weren't really increasing that much before the Industrial Revolution. So they basically used figures that like compared how bad wildfires were and how much land they burned like before temperatures started increasing, and now they're comparing that to how much land is being burnt now. So obviously it's like it's not perfect, it's a rough approximation. We can't like experiment with both planets, but based on what they said, the statistical methods they used seem pretty good to me.
Okay. And so my question for group 2, you mentioned that this should be California's problem because they've underinvested in land maintenance, fuel reductions, and things like that. But considering that California wildfires dramatically reduce our air quality here in Utah, and those maintenance activities have a cost, should we as Utahns and people from Idaho and Nevada, should they be contributing to these maintenance activities, considering they get the negative aspect of it?
I think we do, because the Forest Service is a national program and they do have national parks in California. So in that argument, yes, we are paying.
But do you think we should?
I don't think we have a choice on the matter.
So this wasn't presented in the original argument. In 2018, there was a act passed within California legislation, which added almost $1 billion to the amount of funds that are within the state of California to use with natural resources. And only 25% of that was allocated to go to preventing wildfires, which, I mean, is 25 million. So really, what they are spending on the preventative side of it could be a lot more, because they do have the money within the state to spend on that. But like Nicole said, we ended up paying for it as taxpayers because it does come through the National Forest and other programs like that.
Okay. Any other questions?
Oh, I have one thing to add to that. The state of California is also on the hook because PG&E declared bankruptcy. And so not only is California on the hook, but the federal government is on the hook, which affects all of us.
Righty. Okay, so what I'm going to try and do now is, this was the end of the first debate. I would like to find out what people thought. So you're more than welcome to vote for yourself, but we're going to set up a poll that's going to have 2 different questions on it. The first question, actually I'll just set it going. The first question is, what is your personal position on California wildfires? Are they a global issue or local issue? The second question is, independent of this, which team do you think won the debate? So it should go now. Oh, and people are actually able to vote on it. That's quite good. Okay, there's a couple more people to come in. Can you guys see the results as well? Okay. Well, that's everyone voted in, so I'll tell you the results. So the majority of folks, 75% of folks, think this is a global issue. So that's their personal position. But what's interestingly is, although 75% of people think it's a global issue, it was almost a dead heat on who they thought won the debate. So even though people do believe one thing, they can appreciate the fact the argument's on another team. So that's kind of cool. Okay. Oh, we're getting in other direct messages as well. So people think I don't think it's global or local. I think it's both. I think that's entirely valid. I think it's a little bit of a mixture of both things. I mean, there has been, and I think both teams did a very good point of presenting an awful lot of the arguments relating to both of these things. The fact that Yes, the vast majority, and we'll talk about this later in the class, the vast majority of wildfires in this country are human caused. They're campfires, dragging chains, people throwing cigarettes out of windows, all that sort of stuff, which is independent of climate change. But then climate change exacerbates the impact of those fires after they've ignited some of the time. Okay, so first up, again, well done, you guys. It's always brutal to go first, but you guys killed it, so that's awesome. It'd be great if you stay on, because we've now got the second debate. It's always nice to have an audience. If you can, please stay on. This debate is, the title of it is, America should expand coal to meet its growing energy needs, versus America should not expand coal to meet its growing energy needs. We'll start off with group 3, that were America should expand coal. You have 4 to 5 minutes for opening arguments, starting now.
All right, so America definitely should expand coal. I mean, just look at what happened in Texas, relying on the wind energy and the solar energy, which is not reliable as Texas now gets snowstorms. In 2019, there were 706 million short tons that were produced through 23 states. Coal is the world's most abundant energy source. There are over 892 billion tons of proven coal reserves worldwide, enough to last nearly 110 years, which is almost double of natural gas reserves and oil reserves. Coal also has a unique advantage of being able to be stored on site, providing weeks or even months of fuel supply at the power plants. It's really cheap. Just between 2000 and 2005, it was as low as $1.2 per BTU, and we see it at in 2019, 2.02 per BTU, while natural gas is now almost as high as 2.82 per BTU. And coal right now is already 1/3 of the U.S. energy, and provides over 50,000 plus jobs. So getting rid of coal, you're also getting rid of $50,000 jobs at nearly $60,000, which is almost $3 billion not going to American families, because coal is not today's energy source that we need. It's also, look at oil and the damage that it can do if it's leaked. Look at what happened in the Gulf of Mexico with the Deepwater Horizon and the BP oil spill that ruined a lot of, did a lot of damage there. Yeah, that's.
You have a couple of minutes. You can take the time yourself, yield to your team, or yield your time.
I also want to add that in 2019, coal had 53,714 employees in the United States and was worth $20.29 billion. However, in 2010, it was more like 40 billion. Also, in the state of Kentucky alone in 2007, that was $800 million going to families, indirect wages going to families in the state of Kentucky. Also, going back to the oil thing he mentioned, the good thing about coal is that it's domestic. We have plenty of it here, and you don't deal with foreign, Middle Eastern oil and embargoes on that, and also random natural gas shortages. So those were 2 advantages I found.
Okay, you're at 3 minutes. Give you 2 seconds, or we'll yield the time. Okay, righty. So we'll go to group 4. This is the group that says America should not expand coal to meet its energy needs. You have about 4 minutes, starting from now.
Okay, so America should not expand coal use. There are several reasons. The first reason that I want to touch on is air pollution. When coal is burned, it releases a lot of really nasty stuff, such as really toxic chemicals and pollutants like mercury, lead, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, particulates, and very heavy metals. I don't know about you guys, it just doesn't seem like something that's great to breathe in. And through these different heavy metals that everyone's breathing in, and animals are being affected by it, plants are being affected by it. Humans, the health impacts can range from development of asthma and breathing difficulties to brain damage, heart problems, cancer, neurological disorders, and premature death. That's, to me, that's a bit of a bummer right there.
Okay, so there's also, aside from just environmental, there's social impacts that coal can have. And for instance, there are values in the land, such as spiritual values, like the natives, for example. They have a lot more connection to certain areas of the land than we might. But there's also a huge impact on minority groups, and that just, it tends to, they get hit the hardest, and feel the majority of any environmental damage and even economic that can occur with any type of natural resource, not just coal.
And just to go back a bit to the environmental side that Miles was talking about, the US does have a lot of the world's known coal reserves, so it would make sense that we had used it. But now that we are starting to see the impacts that this has on the environment, it's time to kind of change it up and seek out clear, more renewable energy sources. Mining coal disrupts the land around it, obviously. It also affects the chemistry of rainwater runoff, which affects the quality of rivers and streams and pretty much everything else. More of a ripple effect as you go down the line.
You guys have about 30 seconds left if you want, or we can yield the time.
I'll finish up. I think a huge impact that coal has, not only in America, but globally, is something we're all too familiar with, which is global warming. Because of the release of carbon dioxide and all the other pollutants that it releases, it contributes a large factor to global warming, which can bring drought, sea level rise, flooding, extreme weather, and species loss. The severity of these impacts is tied directly to the amount of carbon dioxide that release, including from coal plants. Coal accounts for roughly 1/4 of all energy-related carbon emissions in the United States.
Okay, that's you guys up for time. So now we're going back to team 3. It is time for your rebuttals. You get a couple of minutes to just pick holes in the arguments of the other team, but do not provide any new information. Starting from...
Yeah, so my question is, you were talking about we need to find different reliable energy sources. But just my point goes back to the Texas this last few weeks, is when it's been really cold and the wind and solar just hasn't been reliable. And right now, our natural gas and all of that is only reliable for, we only have 50 some years of stockpiles, while coal has 100+ years of stockpile. And until we find renewable and reliable sources, I just don't see how those are gonna work right now, with all these unknown storms that can possibly come in and just rip it out again.
Okay, you have another minute left if you want to bring up anything else.
So also going back to the same thing once again, you have solar and wind and hydropower, which all work, but the problem with them is there's not a very great way to store the energy they produce in times of high demand. Batteries are big and expensive. Really the only feasible one is hydropower. You can pump water up and use the power of gravity to store energy that way, but no one wants to build more hydroelectric plants because no one likes filling river valleys that people already live in and animals live in. Also, a good deal of the United States is cloudy a lot, especially during winter. So solar kind of falls short for most except the Southwest. And wind, wind requires big open areas, which doesn't exist everywhere.
Okay, that's you out of time. So we'll go to group number 4. Your rebuttals, please, starting now.
Okay, so that's a really valid point that you can't always rely on hydroelectric, wind, and the other and solar energy, but the problem with that is, or at least in terms of this debate, is that America should not expand the American use of coal. We don't have to get rid of it completely. We can simply decrease it to a more manageable size that the environment can better recover from, where plants can reuse that carbon dioxide at a more efficient rate so that it's sustainable, not get rid of it completely. And the rest of the time, when it is available, we can use hydroelectric power, solar power, and wind power.
Yeah, just to kind of go along with that, we are not arguing that we should reduce it completely down to zero. Just as Miles was saying, to allow the environment to be more sustainable and allow technology to improve to the point that eventually maybe we'll be able to get down to all of the clean energy, renewable resources. But for now, just stay where we're at and wait until we have the technology to become better.
Yeah, it's I know, Andrew, you brought up Texas, and while they are definitely not prepared for a storm like that, there are methods of using a combination of energy sources to deal with stuff like that. Like in the UK, and everyone makes tea at the same time. They have to switch the grids, and then they switch them to the dams so that they can release that to provide enough power, so everyone has that. And it really is just kind of, it goes back to that, like it's a combination. So expanding coal wouldn't necessarily make sense in that regard.
That's you up for time now. So we'll now go to closing arguments. So team 3, you have 1 minute for closing arguments. Just to reiterate everything you said, starting from now.
Okay, the United States should expand coal because there's very abundant reserves. It employs a lot of people. It's a very valuable industry. And then biggest of all, some would very much argue that we're going to depend on it anyways, because during times of high demand and low productivity, which right now are inevitable, you're going to switch to coal or oil anyways. But even then, people would say nuclear is good as a third option to counter it, fourth option, sorry. But, nuclear power plants are scary to people because they explode sometimes, and no one likes radioactivity. So you pick the lesser of two evils.
Okay, that is a minute there. So group 4, you have your 1 minute closing argument starting now.
Okay, just to reiterate, the U.S. should minimize or decrease the size of the coal industry because of factors such as air pollution, water pollution, and global warming, just to name a few of these, which involve health concerns and all that. We also have many different alternative sources of fuel, such as hydroelectric power, wind power, nuclear power, all sorts of other more clean energy that will benefit the planet and humanity as a whole.
Okay, righty. So now we will open up to questions. So to change the view again, if you have a question, just raise your hand or send it in the text, and I will ask it out. Starting from now. Okay, we've got a question coming in from Rachel. If you want to ask it, Rachel.
So this one's for group 3. It's kind of a two-parter. number one, where were your coal statistics taken from? Like, how did they know? How do they really know how much coal there is? Because it's underground and we can't really see it. And then part two, what happens when we run out of coal?
So the source I got it from was the EIA.gov, which is the energy. Can't remember what the IA stands for, but it's something with the energy of the government. Can't remember the exact name. I'm not exactly sure how much how they know how much coal there is in the ground. Technology is pretty cool these days. What was the second part of the question?
What happens when we run out of coal? Like, what are we supposed to do? Because if we're just using it all right now.
I don't see coal running out for, I mean, right now, just our stockpile alone is going to last 110 years. And that's not even what is in the ground. There's, I said there's 100 or 892 billion tons that are proven coal reserves that they can go back and get more. So, I mean, in many, many generations, we're not going to run out of coal.
Okay. So we've got two other questions coming in. We'll go Nicole first and then Seth. So Nicole, if you want to ask your question.
My question is related to the expansion of coal, so that would be group 3. If power plants who do operate with coal are switching to natural gas because it's too expensive based on regulations on the Clean Air Act, how is expanding coal going to be solved through mechanisms if they're not wanting to do it now?
Can you re-ask that? Sorry.
If coal is going to be expanded, how are they going to capture the emissions for the Clean Air Act? Because currently they are switching to natural gas because of emissions, carbon emissions.
Okay, so on that, you hear about carbon capture technology, Elon Musk just donated 100 million to that, and everyone's talking about that. They could use that kind of stuff mounted to, the exhaust pipes or whatever. Yeah, I don't really have a great answer for that.
That's worth knowing. Okay, Seth, you also had a question?
Yeah, so my question's also for group 3. And it's related to, they talked about how like in Texas right now, all like the renewable energy stuff isn't working for obvious reasons. And so they have to use coal power to solve their problems. But they're talking about like expanding the use of coal power in the United States. And my question is, why would you expand the use of coal power when you could just like keep it the same and then like increase incrementally our use of renewable energy? Because renewable energy is like infinite, and coal, it will eventually run out, even if it's in 200 years.
Well, I mean, right now, 200 years is a long time away. I mean, I'm not personally not looking 200 years down the road. Some people might be for future generations, but what we're seeing in Texas is they didn't have enough power that they could just run through. And sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. Repeat the last part of that question, please.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, you guys are arguing that we should like increase coal production, and I'm saying why not just like keep it the same, like keep the coal plants we have, and then slowly like phase them out while increasing our amount of renewable energy that we use.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in the next week. What's going to happen is if a volcano explodes, what's going to happen when the sky is covered in ash and there's no sun? There's the wind has died down. We need some power some way. I mean, we didn't expect a storm in Texas, and it happened. So I mean, we need to expand our coal to have that power for when things we don't expect happen. Like, it's not reliable. Otherwise, solar would be on every roof in America. There would be wind farms everywhere in America that we could have them. It's just not reliable right now, and we need to have enough energy to provide for all of America right now, and coal is a great answer because we have plenty of it.
Okay, that's up kind of the end. So we're going to do the same poll. First of all, big round of applause to both teams. I can do it because I can actually hear me. So that was, yeah, well done. And then I'm going to set up the same poll. So it's great they give you all these fun toys. So there'll be the same thing. Your personal opinion and also who won the debate. So it should be live now. Okay, we've got just over half the folks coming in. Remember, feel free to vote for yourselves. That's totally valid. Waiting on just a couple more. There might be people on phones and things like that, so we'll just give it another 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so just for your own information, we've got, again, a very, very similar and bizarre split. So there are 2 people in the class, or 2 people in this group out of 19 that do believe we should expand coal. But on terms of who won the debate, it was actually an 8 to 11 split. So there was an awful lot of people that still thought that the pro-coal group won, despite the fact they didn't believe it themselves. That is often an important topic, and it was great to see some of the arguments in that one, especially put forward on both sides, because where we are in the US on the coal debate, an awful lot of countries are, in some cases, 10 to 50 years past this. And sometimes one of the ones that's really interesting to look at for this is places like Norway, where Norway at one point was the biggest oil producing nation in Europe. It was among the biggest in the world. It was a gigantic coal producing nation, but now Norway is 98% of its energy is renewable, and it does also it has more than 50% of its new cars are electrical powered. So they've gone right the way through this and out the other side. But it's good to see some of the arguments we used during that change getting reiterated, especially with, oh, we haven't got that much left, or we've got plenty left. So it's good fun. Okay, so I'd just like to thank you all again for coming. I have graded the people that were here. Your grades will appear online soon, and I'm going to upload the video later on today. So once again, thanks for coming, and well done, everybody.
I have a quick question just on the grade.
Yeah, sure.
Is it just purely based on attendance, or
not purely based on attendance? No. So there were some people I know that did do research in advance, but because couldn't make it on time. So is that the case in someone with you as well?
Okay, so how would we have gotten full marks for this?
You're not gonna. So it's based on what I normally do is it's how well you've presented, how well you've talked, and then there are some folks I know that just don't enjoy speaking so much, which is totally fine. I know there's some people that actually can't get here. I give you a mark based on the group, and then I bump you up based on your presentation. If you have contributed an awful lot at the back end, and you can get someone else in your group to say, actually, this person did an awful lot of the research and did an awful lot of the preparation, that will bump your mark up. So all you need to do is get somebody in your group to tell me this person did an awful lot of work, and then I'll bump the grades up. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, for sure.
Is it satisfactory to people? Can anyone think of a better system? Is the other thing. Okay, sweet. Okay, feel free to drop off.